Please remember that nothing we say here should be taken as personal advice. The conversation is for entertainment purposes only. If you have questions about your financial situation, please talk to a licensed financial advisor. All right, welcome to another episode of Future Money, where we talk about the investments of the future
that would make us money.
All right, February
25.
I'm just happy January is over. I'm gonna be honest.
Man, what a start to the year, right?
Yeah. I start all my meetings this year with the unfortunate negative stuff.
Yeah.
The fires and I was very sick in January too, multiple times. So January to me, I'm happy it's come and gone.
I think it's fair we start with an update on the fires. I want to really thank a lot of our friends and clients and the outpour of love that we've gotten the last few weeks for LA, for us, for the people that have been impacted. As you know, a lot of our GK team has been impacted. I think the city is trying to come back to normalcy. I think the cleanup effort is underway right now.
Yeah.
The areas that have been impacted I was in Malibu this weekend. It just looks like a war zone in Malibu.
Oh, in Malibu, yeah.
And it's a war zone down there.
Yeah, it's rough. For those of us who didn't have our houses burned down, it's like we've sort of returned to normal, but obviously the people who have really been impacted by this, they're just getting started, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think I would love to say this because it's important to, when we go through tragedy like this, leadership really matters. Mm-hmm. And right now, without getting political, we need better leadership. I think, our mayor really has not stepped up, and, we've had a lot of issues with figuring out how the cleanup is going to go. I think they're trying to put the debris on the beach now, which is going to create more hazard.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of really BS stuff that's happening right now. And frankly, everyone is pissed off at what the mayor or leadership is doing. And really, frankly, only Tracy Park has stepped up and has been kind of telling us what to do. So I hope we can learn from this, and I hope we get our shit together, because people are suffering. People are people need to build their lives together. A lot of people lost a ton, and we need our government to work for us right now.
Yeah, we can say that about every level of government in this country, honestly.
100%.
From the local to the national.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna get too political on the show, but we wanted to start with a shout out to everyone who's helped in the effort.
Yep. And shout out to our team at GK here.
Our GK team who
if you've been impacted, reach out to us. We have a ton of resources. We got really good at understanding insurance, what you need to do, what you need to help. I think right now people trying to get homes is the most important. So we have resources there, and just really, really kind of help you rebuild, right? So but we're not going to be very negative on this show. We're going to try.
No. We're going to start off with that, and then we're going to be positive the rest of the time.
Yeah. Well, there's listen, the Future Money is really about what's happening in the world and how that's going to impact your money. And frankly, since the beginning of the month, every morning you wake up and it's like a whiplash, basically.
It's like you could wake up and read the news and then go to sleep and read completely different news that happened in the same day.
Yeah. So what we decided, Ayal and I, today is we're going to kind of go through the top 3 that may be not top 3 tomorrow, but I think the top 3 right now.
At least for this moment, possibly when this podcast comes out, will still be on the list of top 3.
Yeah. And these are definitely the conversation we're having internally in our firm with our clients,
Yeah.
And number 1 is tariffs.
I do like tariffs. Tariffs, tremendous tariffs that are massive. To me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff.
Right?
Yeah.
Tariffs.
It's everybody's favorite word now.
Yeah. What is Trump doing and so forth? And I'll preface this conversation by saying that when Trump got elected, I promised myself that in Trump 2.0, I am going to take things for face value, and I'm not trying to overreact, right? Because what we learned from Trump 1.0 is that a lot of things that he does or tries to do don't actually happen, and just the way he communicates it's very different, right? And we as investment professionals are people who are entrusted with managing people's assets and making non-emotional decisions, right? we have to really kind of see through that, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to preface my tariff conversation with. Go, Ayal.
It's hard. Listen, it's real hard. And our clients are asking us this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is what Trump brings to the table, for better or worse, is uncertainty.
Yep.
Some of that uncertainty is positive.
Yep.
A lot of it is negative.
Yep.
And a lot of it makes people feel more negative.
Yep.
Because, again, like you said, whether they happen or don't happen.
Right.
So, last week was I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago when the Mexico tariffs were set to go in.
Sure.
It's a perfect example. Like, there was a press conference that said
Just
tariffs
kidding.
are going in, like, starting now. And then, like, 30 minutes later,
By the end of the day.
it wasn't even that long. It was literally like, it was at the start of my workout in the morning. And after the end of my workout, the tariffs had changed because the market had flipped again. And so intraday, like, everything changes. So we just don't know, frankly. And the idea of a tariff, so I think we should back up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what a tariff is, right? And it might be simplistic for everybody, but it's important to know, right? So Trump is trying to protect U.S. manufacturing, U.S. jobs. This is the idea behind it, right? Let's give him the benefit of the doubt here and saying this is what he's trying to do. Right. Is we're imposing taxes on stuff we import, right? From other countries, which we have a very large trade deficit with other countries. Yep. And in doing so, number one, he's trying to level the playing field with countries like China, with countries like Mexico, even Europe, who has tariffs on us for a lot of things like cars and things like that. Yeah. And bring in income to the government to help pay off the deficit. Yeah. That's on a high level what he wants theoretically in an ideal world.
Except that's not true.
In an ideal world, that's what he wants to do. Right? Yeah. Well, let's talk about reality then.
Yeah. We have a highly complex supply chain where products are made in different countries in different places. Yeah. So if you put tariffs on steel in one place, ultimately what's going to happen is that product that ultimately is maybe a car or a refrigerator or something is just going to cost more money because you're putting a tariff on it that a consumer will have to pay. Right.
Because we know the companies are not, what we learned when we had high inflation, and we'll get to the inflation conversation in a second. Yeah. Well, what we learned in 2022, 2023, when inflation was very high, is the companies are not eating that cost.
Sure.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And ultimately, companies have to make money and have to be, and you don't want them to eat the cost anyways, because companies have to be valued businesses, right? Like they have to, make money down the road.
They have to make money. And to be clear, everyone likes to hate on big business and all this kind of stuff. And they don't just have to make money. Yeah. The pressure on companies, on publicly traded companies, is not just to make money, but to make more money every year than they made the year before.
Right. Yeah.
And that's ultimately what drives share prices. That's ultimately when you hire people to work for your company, the way you compensate, the way you engage the culture of the business, is a lot of it is through equity-based compensation.
It's growth is the main driver.
Right.
You have to grow.
But if I sell $1 million worth of product today, as a publicly traded company, I'm using a small number here for a publicly traded company, and next year I sell 800,000 worth. Yep. Well, that's not going to be very good for my company or my employees, by the way, which people forget about that aspect. Sure. That the employees suffer also.
And also the reality about tariffs is you do not want the government picking winners and losers. That is what tariffs are about, is you want to help one industry versus another. And granted, we do this all the time. Yeah. But I think what's happening is, as messy as capitalism can be and as crazy as as tough it is to survive in this environment, it is the best system that we have. Right. But we're creating these tariffs and trying to help steal or hurt Mexico or hurt Canada. Yeah. Hurt why Canada? Yeah. Canada. Some of our best partners are Canadians, right?
Yeah.
Like like that.
But they so their argument is they put tariffs on our stuff.
Okay, so
well, it's like he started it, right? And so it's that mentality, like, oh, you started it, so now I'm going to do something also,
right? And listen, I think you can't deny that America has the highest earnings per capita of any country in the world, or highest living standard per capita because we have a system that allows for us to benefit.
Like Qatar is higher or something.
Because there's like 200,000
exactly.
people.
Qatar and like Bahrain.
We have 330 million people, right? I think in general, right? Totally. And our GDP is because we just benefit from trade, right? We benefit from being globalist and for being able to...
I think the part that gets missed, and we'll talk about the benefits of, there are some benefits theoretically to tariffs, so we'll talk about the pros and cons, but I think the part that gets missed in all this conversation is the U.S. is a consumption-based economy.
Totally.
Okay? 70% of our GDP is consumption.
Yeah.
And as such, we're going to consume products, and we're going to assume that we're going to get the products from the cheapest place ever. And it's a fun exercise to do this, because I do this with people who are like, oh, I love the tariffs, and we don't want to do this with Mexico, we don't want to do this with China. And I go, great. So where do you buy your parts for your car that you're building, or where do you buy the thread for your T-shirt, and who's sewing it for you? Are you doing it here in America?
No.
Are you buying all U.S. source product? Well, no, but and you want the big immigration reform, and are you employing illegals? You're not. You are. Oh, you are. Okay. So just so we're clear here, like, we are a consumption-based economy. This is not a commentary on border security. This is not a commentary on. This is the idea that we are a consumer-based economy that needs stuff from everywhere.
Correct.
And ultimately, if you want to buy new shoes, we were just talking about shoes before this. I want to buy some new Jordans, right? Because I just went shopping for Jordans as a kid.
Ayal is going back to 1987.
Hey, man, Jordans have never gone out of style. And all the shoes I wore when I was a kid, by the way, are cool today. Yeah. Just so we're clear. So I want to buy a new pair of Jordans, but I'm not going to pay 30% more just to have them sourced in America, right? Because people are just going to buy less. And that's the big thing that gets missed ultimately in the end.
Yeah. And I think also the reason why we're not overreacting is Trump gets this. Trump gets business, he gets markets, or at least he listens to the market.
Like he sort of gets it.
But he gets the impact. I mean, listen, when you're the Treasury Secretary is an ex-hedge fund manager, you know what your priorities are, right? Yeah. And by the way, I think this is going to help us as capital allocators and as investment managers in the sense where, we want our economy to remain stronger and stay stronger.
Of course.
And I think he's just using tariffs as a way to just negotiate with some of these stuff to get a better deal or even get in the news or whatever, right?
His MO is come in, guns blazing.
Correct.
And bring people to the table and try to squeeze whatever you can out of them.
Correct.
We can argue about whether that's a good or bad tactic, and I'm sure everybody's going to have their own opinion on that. But that's what we got.
Yeah, that's what we got. and I think that's what we're telling clients is that's what we got.
Yeah,
y'all and I, we certainly don't know what Trump wants to do. But
I'm not sure he does.
But, but I think the reality is we have to act in a way where we don't emotionally behave. Yeah. And that's going to hurt us long term, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen this happen in Trump 1.0, so you have to learn from those things.
Yeah,
right?
And I think, again, to back up for 1 second, the pros of tariffs are, yes, they do bring in income for the government. They protect businesses here. They help us with the trade imbalances that we have.
Yeah.
But in reality, historically speaking, tariffs have not yielded great results on a global. Sometimes they help on the short term.
Right.
In the worst case scenarios, like in the Great Depression in the 1920s, the most famous is the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act. And I think it became
Hawley-Smoot?
Yeah, it's a weird name. It actually became more famous because of the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I don't know if you ever saw that.
Yeah, I saw that one.
So there's a part where, Ben Stein, who's the teacher, is the Bueller, the guy with the really monotonous voice, and he's talking about the Hawley-Smoot Tariff. And I've seen this meme now circulate on Instagram and stuff a lot now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Alex, can we put that meme on?
Yeah. Please put the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the the Great Depression, passed the a tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects?
But it became a really important thing because during the Great Depression, the U.S. was trying to preserve business in the U.S. and help bring in income. And unfortunately, what it led to is a full-blown trade war, basically.
Yeah. And that's what we don't want.
Right. And so that's...
What happened then?
The U.S. sank... It's funny, Alex, if you could put me and, this clip at the same thing, the U.S. sank deeper into the Depression.
It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
Shit.
Because they were being protectionist.
Right.
And ultimately, free market capitalism doesn't work when you bottle it up.
Nope.
It just doesn't work that way. And there's instances in the 60s, there's instances in the 80s with Reagan and with Nixon where we instituted tariffs, and they didn't really work. There was a short-term bump, and longer-term there was more pain in general.
Right.
There are scenarios earlier in our history where tariffs did help, and it's generally better for an economy that's like a startup economy.
Sure, yeah, we're not there.
We're a fully mature economy that needs to source products from all over the world and consume products from all over the world.
Allocation of resources to where it's most efficiently produced is the best thing that we can have for the economy.
Right.
And granted, some people will suffer. It's again, capitalism is messy. That's kind of what happens.
Correct.
And it's unfortunate oftentimes for the steel workers or whatever who, you know, but you just kind of, that's the cycle that we have to go through because ultimately all of us will benefit.
Right. So the hope is that there's a lot of bluster and a lot of saber rattling and people will come to the table and they'll negotiate and we'll negotiate and ultimately we'll come up with some kind of solution, which is what most of Trump 1.0 was.
Right.
There were tariffs on aluminum and steel and lumber.
Yep.
The industries didn't falter that much.
Yep.
But most of the stuff we were worried about as far as tariffs go didn't really come to fruition.
Yep.
I think people are nervous now because in Trump 2.0, re-election is not really what he's worried about.
Right.
So he's more unleashed.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's the bigger issue that people are concerned about.
So tariff good, tariff bad?
Look. And by the way, I've listened to hours of commentary from the best economists and hedge fund managers and former Treasury Fed people. And the bottom line is nobody knows what the F to think because you can put a tariff on a product from Mexico.
Yeah.
They can devalue their currency.
Right. What does that mean exactly?
So basically the country can choose to devalue their currency against the dollar.
Yeah.
Right? Which would therefore not really make it better for us.
Yeah.
And would not bring jobs back to our country.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could do nothing and it'll bring jobs back to our country. Or they could do nothing and we bring jobs to our country and everything becomes more expensive and nobody buys it. So there's the number of scenarios that can happen are so large that the answer is frankly like, do what we always do. Find the allocation you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Stay invested. Buy good investments and stay the course, and that's that.
Right.
And if there's a major market dislocation, we can use that as an opportunity.
That's where the opportunities are, right?
Yeah. But let's not forget that on the positive note, deregulation, possible corporate tax cuts might be good for the economy. At the same time, it might give us some cover.
What a perfect segue to talk about your perfect person, Prime Minister Elon Musk.
Yeah. Should we start calling him Emperor Elon Musk?
Yeah.
Because I feel it's starting to feel like he's running the show.
That's why I call him Prime Minister, man.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
Again, part of being successful in our business is to emotionally try to check yourself and really make decision based on really what's happening and what the long-term track record of things work out, right? Like you can't, again, dislocations happen here and there, but if you just react to them,
sure,
you're gonna find yourself really kind of being thrown away in many different places, and that's not how you want to invest, right? But I think what's happening, what we know is the government has almost $35 trillion in debt.
Yep.
Right. Our debt right now, interest on our debt is the highest expense that the government has, or close to it. I think it's actually higher than our defense budget, right?
Yeah.
Almost $1 trillion a year. Right?
Something that's not Social Security. It's a discretionary spending.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think what Elon and the tech bros are trying to do, right, is really kind of, and it's really important that we understand that there is a direct relationship between interest rates and debt, right? The reason why interest rates are high is because people are selling out treasuries and yields are going higher, right? Because they don't want to own them because we have so much of them, right? So the reality is we need to reduce our debt. Do you do it the way that Elon Musk wants to do it, by cutting everything? I'm not sure.
Like, right? This is the idea of like, it's like medieval surgery. You go in, you're like, oh, you have a little cut. We're gonna take the arm. Just take the whole arm off, and you're gonna be fine. You're not gonna.
Who needs their arm?
Or like, there's a way to do precision surgery. You know what I mean? We have robots that do precision surgery, but he's coming in with a hacksaw, taking limbs off right now.
Yeah. So listen, some stuff will break. That's for sure.
I think that what people are nervous about with Elon and Doge is
Department of Government Efficiency.
Yeah, sorry, not the coin,
not the crypto.
Is this is a totally unprecedented use of power, unchecked power.
Yep.
And they are circumventing the legislative branch of the government, right? The whole point of the U.S. Constitution is we have 3 branches of government that all check each other.
Right.
And these new positions that have been created are unprecedented in the power that they're wielding. And they're going around both legislative and the judges are to be fair, and court systems are stepping in also to be like, whoa, easy. So I once again, the theory behind cutting government spending and being more efficient, I don't think anyone disagrees that the government is an inefficient machine.
100%,
right? But the question is how do we do it? Do we just cancel science?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, the government doesn't need to do science anymore. Like, who needs it?
And candidly, like, first of all, this is a little bit over my head. I don't know what all the government agencies do, right? As you said, I don't think anybody does not believe that the government is efficient. Like, there's a lot of shit that we can cut out, right? Does the Silicon Valley way of doing things, like move fast and break things, to quote Zuckerberg?
Yeah,
I don't think that really is the right way, because a lot of people will get hurt in that process. And maybe the U.S. government is too big of too impactful. And the things that we do are too important for us to break them. But let's hope that he can succeed in helping to cut some of the costs. So rates can come down, because I think if rates come down, also that interest payment comes down, right? So we need rates to come down for our interest cost to come down as well, right? So don't get caught in the daily news of Elon Musk with his kid in the Oval Office trying to explain why he lied, but the reality is, what they're trying to do can actually be good if it's done properly.
Yes. Once again, if we're going on faith in the ideal scenarios that these are creating, there's positives that are going to come on this. Look, in any government, there's negatives and positives. I think this one's just in our face a lot.
Totally.
And it's using a lot of words, a lot of scary words. That people are afraid of, right? When Biden, whatever you thought about him, everything was calm and
Sleepy Joe.
But you know what? People love going to sleep.
Totally right.
But people don't love, break, destroy, tariffs, bullet China shop kind of stuff. That doesn't do it.
Guess what? Markets don't like uncertainty. I think that's the one thing that they don't like.
That being said, the markets are performing just fine. We're near all-time highs.
But we talked about volatility, right?
Yeah, we have increased volatility. And frankly, we had no volatility the last couple of years.
Like, it's not normal, right?
So, so it's not bad. I mean, with the exception of, March of 23 when we had those bank failures.
It's been a smooth ride.
It's basically been a smooth ride. We've had one, I think, 9% correction since like mid-23. Right? So like that, to have some amount of volatility in the markets, not only because of what's going on in the government, but frankly, market valuations are actually high right now.
Yeah.
So the higher the market multiple, the valuation, the price to earnings ratio on the market, which is at a historical fairly high level right now.
I would argue that's more important to look at.
That's
right?
more important, and I agree, and I think that's a good segue into sort of talking. First
of all, those good or bad?
No comment. No comment here. Let's just say the jury is still out.
Okay, let's go. It's only 3 weeks into Trump.
We're 3 weeks into Trump. But with that said, like the fundamentals. So when we're talking to clients, headline risk, we talk about things like headline risk.
Yeah.
Headline risk is what you read on the news.
Totally.
Right? The scary words that we talked about. Yeah. Those are usually short-lived unless there's some major development that breaks something. Fundamentals of the market, which are things that are more important. What is the economy doing? What are rates doing?
Yep.
What is
let's talk about
earnings of
let's segue into that because earnings just came out, right?
Yeah.
Like we're
doing great.
We're doing amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like
So we are, to back up for 1 second, we are at a historically high valuation in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason is there's double-digit growth in earnings this year for the market.
15%.
Yeah, 12 to 15, depending on who you ask.
Right.
We don't know how tariffs or non-tariffs will affect that, but let's just use that as our base case right now. So we can afford a little bit higher multiple if that trend continues. And if it continues, there are many that believe that in 26 we'll get double-digit growth as well.
Right.
So if we have multiple years of double-digit earnings growth, wages are good in the U.S. The economy is still growing.
We're talking about 3% GDP growth.
Yeah. And we have 4% or less unemployment. Right. Those fundamentals are what matter in the end the most.
Yep.
And that against the backdrop of a tech boom, of an AI, which ultimately can reduce the cost of labor, right? Which is deflationary versus inflationary.
Right. Productivity is one of the biggest inputs in the economy.
Productivity, chip manufacturing, a lot of it's now being done here also.
Yeah.
Energy infrastructure in the U.S.
Very, very little.
Intel just went up a bunch because they're like, we'll protect you, Intel, because you're building chips here.
Yeah.
But there'll be more, I think, and so there are risks, but there are also a lot of positive catalysts, and we haven't even talked about possible corporate tax cuts and things like that, which will ultimately benefit the bottom line.
So there's a lot of shit we don't know. But what we know is that there is actually a lot of positive going into the year because of how strong the economy is.
Right. And the AI trend is big. And
so let's talk about that.
Let's talk about AI.
Let's talk about DeepSeek and AI in China. I think we'll close out with that because that's been kind of top of mind for everyone. Just to kind of recap, DeepSeek is basically a Chinese AI model or ChatGPT-like model that the Chinese came out with really out of the blue. This kind of obscure AI lab / hedge fund released these AI model that is very, very good. And it's, the first impression or like the first people were saying, it's coming from China, let's not forget about it. Let's forget about it. But the reality is actually they've done a lot of technical kind of really advancement to get this model to be a lot more efficient, to a tune of maybe 90% more efficient than the OpenAI.
To be fair, they built it on another system, basically.
Correct.
So, my favorite description that I heard of this is somebody said, look, I could have also written War and Peace if I got the first copy of War and Peace and then just finished it.
That's true. That's true. But what also they've done is they've been constrained in their ability to get the NVIDIA chips and really the most advanced AI chips. So they were actually very smart in using software to optimize these models.
Yeah.
Right?
And what they did was really good. Look, ultimately, we knew at some point the infrastructure, right, the chips and all that. We'll talk about NVIDIA and the chip companies in a second, but the next phase is always software.
Well, actually, before you move on, I think there's two things I want to say there. One is it's really funny they did an open source model because you think China closed and so forth. They released like an open source model, which means that anybody can download it, can use it the way they want to. So if you don't use the DeepSeek actually app, you can actually use it on your computer and so forth, right? So that's really funny, but like funny, weird way that actually it's a stab to America, right? Which is the leader, because OpenAI and Anthropic and all these things are actually closed models, right?
Yeah.
And also
except
hold on. Let me finish this. But also too, right? They, we all thought that America was leading China by years, right? China has way more engineers, way more mathematicians than we do, right? Yeah. And for us to have thought that they were not going to catch up to us, that is a wake-up call.
And by the way, not to mention a way bigger incentive to be able to control their population.
Totally. Yeah, 100%.
Right? Like, and that's the idea. But again, I think, number one, I think everybody agrees right now, for people who know about this, that they were built on the normal NVIDIA chip. They somehow got
They lied.
And number two, they built a model based on models that were built already.
Yep.
So I'm not discounting.
To iterate.
Correct. I'm not discounting what DeepSeek did, because what they did is awesome. I actually do think it's going to stimulate American innovation even further.
Yep.
Because, right, what did they say? The Sputnik moment. This is the moment that Russia lands on, goes to space. And so we don't, you've been hearing this term American exceptionalism a lot recently.
Totally, yep.
And while I agree that there is some of that, I think we got a little bit carried away with how exceptional we are.
We got checked.
Yeah. With that said, you mentioned the open source and that ChatGPT and all these are closed. The one company that is the open source.
OpenAI.
No, it's called OpenAI, which is closed source. The irony. It's a non-profit, for-profit company that's not open source, but it's very confusing.
Yeah.
But actually, DeepSeek's platform was built on Llama, which is Meta's AI platform, which is the open source.
Yep.
So I think Meta, of all the American companies, has come out of this, looking pretty shiny and sparkly.
Meta is printing money because of digital advertising, and they
totally,
can spend all their.
But if you think of them as now, right, up until this point, let's say up until a year ago, even. Meta, what was Meta? It was Instagram, it was Facebook, it was WhatsApp, it was user engagement, it was
Oculus.
Sort of. Now they have glasses and all that.
They changed
whatever.
their name to Meta, dude.
Yeah. Well, they tried to do the metaverse, and that, actually, to Mark Zuckerberg's credit, one of the best moves he ever made was, he's like, I went to be a metaverse, and then I was like, whoops, and he backtracked, and he completely redid it, and that's actually a mark of a good CEO.
Totally, yeah. He grew up.
He grew up. He learned his, he learned his lesson, but we thought of them as basically just a digital ad platform for the most part, and that's what they were, and that's where they make most of their money. Looking into the future, they could be what I would call the Android of the AI world.
I think they are.
Right? So in 2013, and you'll remember this because you were here, Apple was a $500 billion company, $600 billion company, went down 50% in 2013. Okay? Why? Because Android had overtaken Apple as the number one OS for mobile.
Yeah.
And people freaked out that Apple was done.
Yeah.
That was $3 trillion in market cap ago.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that speaks to NVIDIA, to say that NVIDIA's fine.
Yeah.
All the big tech companies reiterated their spending. Some of them upped it even.
And I think what you're alluding to is that you're going to have different kind of AIs. You got to get open source, cheap AI. You got to get AI specialized, like the DeepSeek, maybe specialized in a certain thing.
Right.
You're going to have the high-end AI that's maybe run by OpenAI or Anthropic. You're going to have
There's probably a bunch of companies that we don't even know yet.
Totally. 100%. I know that.
There was no Google in 1996 when the internet came out.
Nope. Netflix.
You know what I mean? When the 1995, Netflix is way further in the iteration, but we think of Google as like the fundamental like part of the internet.
Right.
Right? Like the internet doesn't really exist without Google, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, actually, AI would not exist without Google because
right?
they invented transformers.
But in 1995, when AOL came out and when Netscape Navigator was working on Windows 95 computers, there was no Google.
Nope.
Right?
Nope.
Remember this company called Ask Jeeves, which became Ask? That was the search engine I used when I got my first computer.
Dating yourself, my friend.
Yeah, I am 100%. There's a point to this story.
Alex, do you know Ask Jeeves?
See, Alex knows it. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, thanks.
Alex is young.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I do like, and it's not an exact apples to apples comparison, but I do like in this idea that maybe NVIDIA is like the Apple today, and maybe Llama, which is Meta's version, is like the Android.
Yeah.
And platforms can be built on both, as we've seen.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's, I think, at the end of the day, and this is our thesis, in NVIDIA is one of our top holding in the firm. We've been investing in it for a long time. We're very bullish on the whole AI theme. And what you see what happened with DeepSeek is cheaper, more efficient AI just means more AI.
Yeah.
And more AI is really good for the world.
Correct. It's not just 6 companies paying for all the AI.
Right.
Right? Like, and to be clear, I'm not worried about NVIDIA and even on the short term because all the big tech companies, Google, Meta said they're spending $60 billion.
Dude.
Amazon upped theirs to like 90. And you're just like, these numbers
talk about
are
that a
insane.
little bit more. Specify what you just said. Like,
yeah. So on their earnings calls this quarter, which was last week, the week before, the big tech companies have reiterated their commitment to spending on AI chips, specifically NVIDIA, H100s, and then when the Blackwell chips come and are
data
available. Data centers. And so the Mag 7, so to speak, which, you know, with the exception of maybe Apple, they're all heavily, Microsoft said it too.
Yeah.
I can't remember their number. It was like 40 billion or 50 billion.
Yeah.
65
billion from
65 billion. Sorry, I'm way off. These numbers are insane, by the way.
Like a billion is 1,000.
1,000 millions. Yeah. And we just threw out 3 companies that are spending like 180 together.
No, 300 billion is the number.
Just those 3 companies.
So 300 billion is just in capex just this year.
Yeah.
It's like more than the GP of like most countries. Yeah, it's like crazy.
And so I'm not worried about NVIDIA. They are going to be fine. What I will say is exactly what you said. The AI trend is actually more important now because now not just the companies with $200 billion on their balance sheet can get in the game.
Yeah. Right. I remember like maybe 2 months ago, universities were freaking out because they were going to be left out of the AI race because they didn't have the resources to buy all these chips.
Correct.
And now with DeepSeek, they're actually able to build very cheap models so they can actually do research.
So there's going to be a ton of models, a ton of versions built on this. And this just makes the playing field bigger. Now, NVIDIA's the leader by far still in the chip makers. Maybe a competitor comes along and does that.
The Chinese are building their own chip infrastructure, right?
Yeah, we're not selling a ton to them at this point anyway.
No, but they're building their own chip industry, right? Like I don't know if they're going to be able to do the EUVs that ASML makes. Like these are like insane machines that cost $300 million.
They're pretty good at manufacturing.
Yeah,
it's what I heard.
But these are like crazy. You know, lasers and atoms or whatever. I don't even know how they make these things, but the reality is that China is going to be a player, right?
Yeah, of course.
And frankly,
that is the second largest economy in the world. How do we expect them to not be a player?
Correct. And that was again, you talked about American exceptionalism. That's really nice to actually get checked. So like, hey, listen, this is a race and we need to keep fighting, And I think the reality is there was an AI summit in Europe, in France, in Paris, this week, actually. And nothing happened out of the summit because they're trying to basically put more regulation. I'm like, you guys need to wake up, So I think the reality is this race is happening.
Yeah.
And that theme is much bigger than Trump's tariffs or much bigger than, the short-term kind of fluctuation that we see, because this can create a much, much bigger wealth and new economy really for
and to be fair, like, by the way, like something can go wrong in the economy for 2 years. That's still a short period of time.
100%.
Right? But when we talk about a secular trend, a multi-year theme, right? We saw it again, 90s PC revolution.
Right.
The early 2000s was the internet.
Right.
Then we had the mobile phone revolution. We had social media.
Cloud.
Right. Then cloud.
Yep.
And AI is the next and possibly biggest iteration of this.
Yep.
And fastest, most likely. Yep. So whenever these trends have come to play over the last 3 decades now, and you could argue that in the 80s we had like mainframe computers and that was the revolution. But let's just say the last 30 years, the secular trend has always created a bump over a multi-year period.
Correct. Yep.
And in any 5-year period or 3-year period, anything can happen.
Sure.
But if you focus on the long-term trend and what's happening, where money's going, capital expenditure, business, creation, there's going to be some creative destruction. That always happens.
I love that word. That's exactly it. Yep.
And I tell people this all the time, and I've used this on the podcast before. My entire adult life, all I've heard is how machines are going to replace us.
Right.
Whatever we do, whatever your job is, machines are going to replace you. And we're hearing that again. Meanwhile, we have 4% unemployment.
Yeah.
And everybody's job is fine so far.
100%.
I mean, obviously,
it's again, it's creative destruction. Such a great way of like, we can end on the show on that because it's part of the mix. It's why we exist. It's why we try to make sense of this really complex world, right?
Yeah. It's evolution in the end.
Exactly.
Right? And the people, and we'll leave you with this, the people who embrace technology, right? Who bring it into their lives and use it to enhance will be the winners here.
Yeah.
And we've known that with every next generation of technology, the people who embrace it and integrate it into their businesses and their livelihoods will ultimately have a leg up on the competition when the next gen comes.
Yeah. So excited about this year.
Yeah.
Despite all the volatility.
Turn the noise off.
Yeah. Turn it off.
And remember, focus on whatever your goals are.
Yeah.
And call us if you have questions.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll see you next month.
All right. Cheers.